Hi everyone, and welcome to the Mott MacDonald Prosilience series in partnership with Mott MacDonald and the Big Five Saudi. Could you please just let us know in the chat box whether your audio is clear and that you can hear us? Today we have Chris Tebb, Luai Kadir, and John Rains here from Mott MacDonald, who'll be discussing how smart infrastructure can help digitize the construction industry. So if you'd just like to pop in a message in the chat box on the right, just to let us know that you can hear the audio. And then we can start. So I'm just going to hand over to the speakers now and they'll introduce themselves. Thank you very much. And I'll hand over now. Hi, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Alexia. Yeah, Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining the call. This is the first session of the Mott MacDonald Prosilience series. My name is Luai Kadir. I am the Middle East Development Director at Mott MacDonald, joined by Chris Tebb and John Rains, that they will introduce themselves in a few minutes after my segment. So, we are in an industry now that has shown the least progress in the digital front in their adaptation. So it's up to us. Either we continue at this slow pace, or we do embrace digital disruption that's happening and make a difference. In this series, Mott MacDonald series, we will share and explore how we can address this. But let me start by a simple definition of prosilience, which is a combination of proactive and resilience. And it's the act of providing resilience in a system through proactive mechanisms such as simulation, prediction, digital twin, and Internet of Things. As for our series, is going to be into three main sessions. The session today will be by myself. Smart infrastructure will be covered by Chris Tebb, and the digital ventures through John Rains. In a couple of weeks' time, on the 13th of May, Umang will be handling cybersecurity, and Farah addressing the new ways of working. And last but not least, the third session will be by end of May. We will gonna talk about design for manufacture and assembly, DFMA, covered by Simon Kerr, and future mobility by Andy Stevenson. So as a global organization, we are seeing global challenges across different parts of the world. And this is affecting our clients and the customers they are serving. So I thought that I would highlight 5 of these global challenges, but of course they are not limited to these 5. Challenge number 1, as you can see on the right side, the right diagram, it's mainly the construction sector is quite at the end of adopting the digital transformation. And in fact, the only category or sector below that is agriculture and hunting. And it's no wonder that if you combine that with the left diagrams, where you have the productivity at its lowest, and obviously you will have the profit will be a minimum compared to the size of the market and the opportunity that it will bring. Challenge number 2 would be water availability. It's no surprise that our region, if you look at the map, we are at the extreme conditions of availability of water. And in order for our societies and economies to diversify the economy, especially in the GCC, away from the dependence on oil, we have to make sure that we have available water, and at the same time efficiency in our systems to make sure that our diversification in our industry is maintained. The third extreme is basically related to climate change and extreme weather. And although in the past we used to think that these issues, they will not touch or come close to the Middle East, however, we started seeing some examples of flash flooding, what we call it, in different parts in the GCC. And this is something that we need to address and work on our infrastructure to make it very resilient from how we design it, and then after that, how we build it and maintain it. The fourth challenge, cyber threats, and this will be addressed in depth with during the second session, but it's no surprise again that with the amount of data and the amount of connectivity that we have in our business and our working life, we are more, let's say, receptive to threats from hackers and the risk associated with it. And I just highlighted one example here where Saudi Aramco reported many attempts of cyber attacks on their systems. So with the digital adaptation, this also brings the attacks to systems. And of course, we don't forget also the workers or the people. So this is also, we need to have the right maturity and the right systems for our workforce in our construction industry to make sure this threat is minimized. And the last challenge that I wanted to share is the population concentration and the failure of systems. Although you will have a lot of new, let me call it, digital stuff that we want to embrace and want to add, we always have the risk of failure. In addition to the large amount of people moving to cities and want to be in cities, so that they want to be better connected to everybody. So with these 5 challenges, I'm handing over to Chris to start talking about smart infrastructure and how we as Mott MacDonald view the construction industry and how we can integrate that with the digital part. Chris, over to you.
Thank you very much, Luai, and welcome everyone, and thank you very much for tuning in to this, the first of this series. And it's obviously my honour to kick this off with the series of thought leaderships and practical applications of digital that we are trying to use to solve today's problems using today's technologies. So my name is Chris Tebb. I'm the Regional Digital Lead for Mott MacDonald. As a region, we are bounded by geographies that run from the United Kingdom through to India, the Middle East, and down to South Africa. But we're very much focused on international development, the Middle East, South Asia, and Africa in terms of where we work. So my role is to make sure that digital is being maximised within Mott MacDonald and helping our clients to generate value through the use of digital practices, processes, techniques, and the like. So just continuing from kind of where Luai was taking this and focusing this on the challenges that we are facing as an industry. We can't look at digital in a passive way again. That's gone on for far too long, and we need to start looking at the market trends, the business challenges we're facing, increasingly changing client requirements. Clients are continually asking for more, for less, and that needs to be delivered in a smarter way, and digital gives us that avenue to do that. And there are a series of emerging technologies, blockchain, AI, Internet of Things, that are disrupting our industry or have the the power to disrupt our industry. And we need to evolve to make sure that we embrace that. We need to look at the fact that we will never be moving this slowly again. This is the pace of technological disruption is only going to increase. So we need to make the right decisions and start to use this now to make sure that we don't get left behind. At Mott MacDonald, we're in the process of creating a new position. on digital, which will be shared to the external market, so you can see that where we're coming from this. And I've just taken this phrase out of here because when I was reviewing the draft with our Chief Digital Officer, this really jumped out the page at me. This was the sentence that paraphrased everything that we are trying to do, because this has links to satisfaction within employees. It looks at happiness. It looks at sustainable development. It allows us to focus on the problems, and it starts to address the business challenges that we face. You know, if we have people spending a lot of time doing mundane, repetitive tasks, and that eats up our fees, that eats up our money, and that can then translate into more commercial success. So we've been seeing an evolution of digital delivery now for several years. People will have heard phrases like BIM bandied around, and you know, we've started to do this, and we are evolving, and we are on this constant quest to improve and develop. So in terms of this triangle, you know, we have process defined. We're seeing industry leading standards such as ISO 19650 and BS 1192. That's setting the scenes. There are obviously many others available, and local versions are creeping up and coming into play. And we've started to think about how we deliver things. Is it the right way? We process map what we do. Can we make improvements to the way that we deliver, the tools that we deliver? And we started to use those tools. This module layer of this is very much around using those tools. But what we've seen is that the buildings guys and girls will run off and do Revit. The civils guys will use either Open Roads or other software like that. And we're not quite getting that connectivity. We're still siloed to a degree. So we've started to introduce things like common data environments and electronic document management systems to create that platform for collaboration. And these things are getting smarter. You know, AI is coming in and so on. We're looking at how we can share objects rather than models. We can move towards that, you know, single creative hub of information sharing and protection. And then we're also developing that industry platform. How can we standardize that? How can we make sure that every player within the industry can work in the way that they want to, but it's providing that value, providing that standardization, providing that consistency. We need to look to the future and look at how we can share information without impacting on ownership, intellectual property rights, or liability. To achieve this future, we need to start using existing data in smarter ways to gain insights, to make better decisions and deliver better outcomes. Many organizations are exploring data science, from the big management consultancies to major software and IT companies, and even we're seeing new players emerge as digital disruptors onto the stage. From our perspective as Mott MacDonald, we've been engineering assets for over 100 years, and we can bring that in-depth design expertise to smart infrastructure, to our digital expertise, and that will enable us to help provide that. So where does that leave us? Well, that leaves us at a crossroads. We are starting to see an increase in digital abundance. I love this quote because I've been using this quote in presentations for at least the last 5 years. Now, interestingly, coming into this, I did my research and I saw we haven't quite achieved that 7 times more IoT devices than people by 2020. We are looking at around 25 million IoT devices currently, which would be about, 2.5 times the number of devices to people. But the curve is growing, and we're still expecting to see around 40 million by the middle of the decade. So the question is are we as an industry, are we ready to use this abundance of information that's created and captured digitally? How can we use this to enhance our existing information? How do we then start to make that reach out into the human world? How can we address the physical constraints you can see on this slide, the key challenges that Luai introduced at the start of this series, and how can we start to improve and make sure that we can maintain a sustainable quality of life for everyone whilst addressing those challenges? So I'm now going to introduce 2 ways that we are driving smart infrastructure as an organisation. And both of these are digital tools that we at Mott MacDonald have developed. And these are ones that we believe that can start to help the industry move forward. The first one will show you is a benchmarking tool. I'll go through that obviously in a bit more detail. And the second one is the emergence of that industry platform that we're seeing, the Mott MacDonald solution for digital twins, something called Moata. I will introduce to you today how we started, how we developed that platform, and how its first use case came about. So the Smart Infrastructure Index, it's a website, everyone can go to it. If you can see the screen clearly enough, you can either grab the address from the address bar at the top, or it's repeated down at the bottom right. This came into existence through a collaboration. Mott MacDonald were involved in the United Kingdom. We worked with the Institution of Civil Engineers and the Infrastructure Clients Group on something that was titled Project 13. Nothing intelligent around that other than it was the 13th project to be launched that year. But this was targeting how not just the supply chain, but the clients were approaching this. There was an interesting article in the BIM Plus, in the BIM Hub the other day about how much progress have we made in BIM. And the key areas that we fall down is probably the client side. Clients are not specifying what they need to run their assets, to identify criticality, to ensure the peak performance of assets. And where the supply chain is generating that information, it's not then subsequently being put to good use in the operation and maintenance phase. So this tool has very much been developed to assist infrastructure owners, asset owners of all types to understand how your business works from a digital perspective. So the whole point of the tool, or the objective of the tool, is to help you understand your digital maturity. It takes about 15 minutes to complete, and it will provide you with a benchmark against other global infrastructure groups. Our database is growing, so obviously this will continually to be updated. And this index will provide a personalized report that identifies that we can help identify the right services to advance your maturity across the categories that you can see on screen. So this is aimed at helping clients to identify where they can use digital transformation and the latest technologies to start to unlock value. This isn't something you necessarily would take in isolation. The more results you get from across the business, the better, at all levels, from CEO down to engineers or so on. The more information that you collect, the more robust your assessment will be, and so on. If we want to take this further, we can provide a digital detailed dashboard to review your results and start to really understand and provide insight into your digital capability. And one of the key elements as well is that you can keep taking this test so that you can continue to track your improvements, to track your digital maturity year on year, and combine that against how you are progressing with your peers and so on. So this really sets out that first stage, in identifying where the strengths, where the opportunities are to progressing your digital maturity. Moving on to the platform and how we can really start to translate this into practical, real-world applications. This is an opportunity that we had to use the power of real-time data management to bring huge efficiencies to the way that we manage our water and our wastewater assets. As I mentioned earlier, we developed a tool called Moata, which is an innovative sensor-based water visualization tool, and it brings real understanding and better management to water and wastewater networks. It's currently being used by over 12 local authorities to streamline asset management, improving service, release capacity, and cut costs. But I'm just going to take you through the very, very first use case that we had. So this is in Auckland, this is in New Zealand, and this came about predominantly to help Auckland Council continue to provide a service. Like many cities in the Middle East, they have got that target of trying to be the most livable city in the world with the happiest citizens. So they thought, well, what can we do for our citizens when it comes to swimming and safety? And there was also a trade-off, because in return for developing this tool, Auckland City Council were also able to raise the rates for their tax that they go on local residents by 0.5 point. So it was in return for getting something to increase that service. So what you can see here is the output. This is, again, it's another website. It's readily available. You can go and have a look. And as you can see, it starts to map where it is the best places to swim currently. So this takes over 10 data streams, which involves over 1 billion data points. and it analyzes the bathing water quality within the analytics and the predictive modeling element of the platform. This enables the public that they can then view live and predictive water quality across the 84 beaches that are spread across Auckland, and they can choose which one to go to. And this has had real impact. This has shown benefit across usage. So just to pick up on three highlights of this, where this tool has really improved the local living conditions. The site has had over 250,000 visitors since it went live, and that number is growing. By having that rate change that I mentioned, that was one of the driving for developing this tool, it's enabled the Auckland City Council to spend an extra $400 million on water quality upgrades. So not only is it providing that instantaneous tool of being able to pick the right beach to go to on any given day, but it's also helping to fund that infrastructure to improve the overall water quality and provide more beaches to the public. And obviously, the key element for this from an Auckland perspective, it has moved them one step closer to being the most livable city in the world. So we're starting to see this digital platform used in other areas. We're looking at route optimizers in transportation, asset management in sludge to energy treatment plants. So there are a whole host of availability, and with the technology you've got and the digital advancements we're making, the inclusion of sensors, we can take this a long way. And we're really keen to continue to advance or continue to have this conversation with clients to see what is possible. And with that, I am going to pass over to my colleague John, who is going to talk around digital ventures.
Thanks, Chris. That's really good stuff. And hello, everyone. So my name's John Rains. I'm the investment director in our Mott MacDonald Ventures division. Although based in the UK, we look after venturing globally. The purpose really is to partner and or invest with technology startups to complement what Lue and Chris were saying really, and provide the best technology through to our clients. So although our main purpose is the attraction of that best technology, we're also focused more in the short term right now on addressing infrastructure recovery. So on the right hand side of this slide with our digital solutions. So clearly in the current situation, unfortunately with COVID-19, there's a lot of difficult situations, but we're starting to get over it. One of the things will be the recommissioning of transport systems, and we're currently engaged with clients to help them recommission those through technology. So our investment thesis and the reason we exist really is to invest really in visionary founders, in startups with really small teams who've got a real passion for what they're doing, and we want to leverage the digital innovation right through to, again, what Chris and Lue are saying on the built environment in certain sectors. This is really clearly focused on specific problems. So rather than just trying to push a solution into a problem, we work really closely with our account leaders and through to our clients to understand what those problems are first, and then go out and search all around the world to find some of the best solutions. So just building a little bit more on that, we're specifically targeting the transport, water and energy sectors, and that's complementary to our main business in Mott MacDonald. We're not saying we don't invest in some of the other areas, it's just we want a particular target. The domain focused is infrastructure technology, or infratech, or sometimes known as deep tech. There's a lot of interesting words floating around this kind of industry. And then again, on the economic recovery, we're looking at specific grand challenges focused on things like clean energy growth. AI has mentioned the automation of different things, and the recommissioning of major transport systems. So talking around prioritizing some of our client challenges, late last year we undertook a bit of a review with our client base on, and just asking the question really is what's keeping you awake at night, what's particularly a challenge to you, and we ended up with about 240 type of different comments and got those down to 6 areas, which are these, and I've just mapped these against the Sustainable Development Goals by the UN, the SDGs, but that's intelligence mapping, customer engagement and community enhancements, reducing waste, operational performance. So those are the key areas that we're looking at. So through to the actual startups themselves. So here's three really good ones. Either we're partnering with them or we've actually made an equity investment, which is typically a minority equity investment. And that really proves that we can add that domain expertise into their digital solution, and we're fully bought in for the long term. So this gives startups confidence that we're going to be with them and supporting them, and hopefully that they feel like that as well. So just talking through the three on the screen. So 3D Repo, as Chris mentioned, this is really a BIM solution. A little bit more than that, because it's cloud-based, which means you don't need the software on your machine. And the team who's developed this is fantastically passionate about what they do, and you'll see this is already deployed on major infrastructure projects around Europe, and actually underpins some of the technology uses around that. So the picture on here is really this green and red is showing you clash detection, which is one of the many functions that's available within the system. But they're building that out, and they can do a lot more than that. The second one is Built ID. So this team runs a piece of software, web app, which you can see on the mobile device there, but also you can use it on a computer, which is a community engagement tool, which is called Give My View. And this is about reaching out to much broader elements of the community and diverse elements of the community who don't often engage with infrastructure schemes. So when we go and propose schemes and want to know where the local population thinks about it, this is a great way, and you can see the figures there. They've got a massive amount of engagement relative to the traditional techniques of engaging with the local population and what they think of the proposed infrastructure. And their real vision is to allow the population to be involved somewhat in the design to make sure it's a great solution. And they're operating around the world. And on the right hand side, One Planet. So this is a sustainability tool, and the vision there is making sustainability possible by connecting the dots. So this is a technology where you can map your sustainability commitments. It's used in impact investment right through to major infrastructure schemes, and it's a very easy way of visualizing the sustainability footprint. It uses graph database technology, similar to Facebook and LinkedIn and things as well, but it's really a simple way of presenting those solutions. So those are some of the technologies we are already working with. These are I've just picked up three. We look at 300 startups a year, and just three that are currently having a chat with Data Technics, who produce a solution. Really, this is around a methodology that attaches to the pipe, which can detect microstrain movements in that, and looking after the asset management of the pipe and how that kind of performs. They've just been undertaking some trials recently in the UK. The one in the middle, Nodes and Links, this is a step change way of risk management within project management, and what they do is present the risk in project programs and costs, so typical Gantt charts and things. They present it in a brand new way, so you can end up with rank ordered critical paths, so you can understand exactly what's going on the project, where the critical tasks are. And then Polaris is a transport planning modeling tool, where they can pretty much instantly do some first pass feasibility studies on certainly light rail and other transport solutions. So we're talking to these guys at the moment. We also do market analyses. So this is my colleague John Hale has produced. This is on LinkedIn, got about 6,000 hits at the moment. And this is basically VR and AR and XR, which means anything reality, on what the kind of focus on different companies are and what people are using virtual reality and augmented reality for around the world. And that's sort of to help startups as well. So that's Mott MacDonald Ventures. So we're a corporate venture capital firm. That's our arm to support Louis and Chris, attracting the best technology to help us with our Mott MacDonald Digital Ventures right through to clients. Thanks. So back to you, Louis.
Yeah, thank you, John, and thank you, Chris. We have quite some time now, almost half of the time allocated to this session for questions, answers, clarifications, etc. So feel free to write a question in the chat box, and if it is addressed to a specific one of us, that's fine. Otherwise, we will pick up somebody to answer your question. If the answer is not available with us as we speak, if you can share your details, and we'll get in touch with you after the call to discuss it further. Okay. So, one more thing just before starting questions and answers. As you can see on the screen, you have our contact details, especially the email and the LinkedIn connection. So feel free to reach out to any of us for further details or discussion. Okay. Any questions?
We're going to move into Q&A portion now. So I can see that we had questions come in from Hisham. He's asking, so this platform works in planning or operation or both? And I know Chris gave a little bit of an outline, but I know he's going to go into a little bit more detail now.
Thank you, Alexa, and thank you very much, Hasham, for your question. So we are very much looking at developing this as a through asset lifecycle tool. So it could be used for planning, it could be used for operation. What we are trying to build is we started with a geospatial platform, and now we're moving into the analytics and adding that. And you saw some example of that from Safe Swim. I alluded to in the presentation that we have currently this, we've developed in Wales, in the United Kingdom again, this energy sludge to energy treatment plant, and that's been built as a full digital twin. So the plant has been visualized in a 3D model, and then all of the sensors and all of the measurements of the performance of that plant have been built into the Moata platform, and that will enable them to run simulations. But we've also, this isn't just something that happens in the operation phase. I think, I would stress that we've done these things during planning stages. There's projects, again, sorry for giving UK examples, but the things like high speed rail 2 and things like water management in Lancashire, they're all using this tool for planning and simulation. So the limit of it really is boundless. It can be used in the early stages, it can be used in the later stages. We just need to kind of work out what the requirements are, what the data is, how we would translate that into meaningful insights and build the platform around that.
Okay, so we have the next question, I think.
Just before jumping to the next question, Alexia, I would like just to add to Chris's answer. This Smart Infrastructure Index, it's very important that different parts of the organization, they fill it. So ideally, if you are talking, let's say, about a utility company or a government entity, it's very important that you will have representatives at the highest level, the C-suite, board members, CEO, etc. And then you go down to different department heads and all the way to engineers and designers within the entity. Because with that, it will give a balanced understanding where they are in their digital maturity. Because in many instances, we found that at the higher level, C-suite and the department heads, they are quite clear. But when it goes down to implementation, they are going back to traditional, old-fashioned, let's say, methods that is affecting the progress of such embracing of this technology. The other one, quick comment, everybody was asking about the contact details, the emails basically. They are now shared at chat box. So you have the emails of the three of us. Okay, Alexia, back to you.
Great. So the next question is from Mohsen. He asks, hi, John, do you only look at startups in the infra space, or do you look at startups in the building space?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So we look at it in the building space as well. We have a primary focus on the infrastructure, but yeah, it's generally around the structural side of buildings and the largest, more civil engineering aspects. So maybe not so much as inside and temperature gauges, more of the macro elements of that bit. But yes, we do. Thanks for the question.
Okay, and then we have from Becky, we said, which sector has been the most proactive with digital twins? How have they improved their smart infrastructure?
So I can answer from in terms of where we've been working with kind of Moata. So the two sectors that we're seeing the most impact in at the moment are the water and the transport sector. The water sector has been leading this particularly. The tool has been deployed with local authorities across the world, from Australia through to America, and they are using it to help to manage and track and maintain their water networks. I mentioned that in the previous answer as well, we're starting to branch out into transport. High Speed 2 in the UK is using that, and we are currently looking, and I think this kind of answers a question later as well, is we are looking at transport and energy sector opportunities within the Middle East, and that does include Saudi Arabia. So we are in talks with some Saudi Arabian clients around bringing the digital twin into that. We don't have any examples yet, or can't quite reveal the details because obviously we're still under confidentiality clauses.
Okay, and the next question comes from Hilal. What about the BIM approach and utilizing 4D, 5D, and 6D to help during construction supervision and project/schedule controls?
That's a very good question. I think what we've covered today is very much around the asset side of things. We haven't really delved into the design, other than tools like the route optimizer that we've got on the digital platform can be used to help influence design thinking. I think there are, from my perspective, there is a lot of tools out there at the moment. There's no one tool that covers everything really for construction supervision, but we are starting to see the market respond, and I think it is really important that tools are used for cost simulation, program scheduling, and carbon capture and so on. And there are tools around. We've got a carbon portal that we've developed, which will help during the design phase to make sure embedded carbon is taken into consideration when we're designing. So probably something I'll take up in more detail away from this call.
The next question comes from Becky again. She says, what have been the main challenges and successes for Mott in implementing their digitization strategy?
Oh, what a wonderful question. I'm going to take the success one first, simply because we have a very good example. And as we're all aware, we are sat in our respective home offices, and we've been severely disrupted by lockdowns, travel stopping, and so on like that. So I think one of our biggest successes in our overall digital transformation is that we were able to go from probably, I think, around 70, 80 offices around the world to nearly 16,000 offices around the world in a very short space of period. And our systems have been built, particularly from an IT side, and the way that we work, by the tools that we've adopted and embraced, it has meant that process has been seamless, and that we've not had to reduce our productivity. We've not had to reduce our output to the client. Yes, there's been a few teething problems, but in general, we've been agile enough, because we've embraced digital transformation to respond to the current crisis in a very effective way. Just to answer your first part of that question is around as well around challenges. The biggest challenge always is and always will be people. Trying to bring people on board, trying to change behaviours, trying to generate that culture where digital is at the heart of things is always going to be the biggest challenge. And obviously at Mott MacDonald, as an organisation of around 16,000 people, that's by no means an easy task. So it is about setting out what that journey is, what the outcomes are going to be, what the benefits are, and you need to make it personal. You need to say, this is the benefit to you as an individual, and not just the benefit to the company, and more importantly to your clients.
Gabriel asks, is 3D Repo able to be plugged in as AS built 3D models done via drones or crane cameras?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure as the answer to that, but it does work on API connections. So knowing the team, I'm pretty sure it probably could. But if you'd like to contact me on my email address, I'll put you directly in touch with them and they can answer the question. But typically that's what it is based for, is a whole solution, so we can link multiple models together, including the remote sensing of things like that as well. But I'll put you in touch and double check that.
Shamim asks, question to Mr. Chris, is there any organizational reference in Saudi Arabia?
So this was the one I partly answered earlier. So we are in talks with companies and organizations in Saudi Arabia at the moment. I can't reveal anything. We don't have any finished products, but hopefully in 6 to 12 months' time, I'll be able to give you more details on that.
With the current situation, where do you think the infrastructure investment will be in the GCC, and will there be governments or utilities companies?
Yeah, hi. I'll take this. There is no doubt that the governments they can't do everything all the time alone. So the private sector, they need really to step up. When I say private sector, that's not only companies. You're talking about the whole population. You're talking about the locals, the expats, the companies, etc. Everybody needs to step up and do his or her part in the whole formula. Now, from investment point of view, there is no doubt that the focus in the short term will be on critical investments and mainly critical infrastructure. And what I mean by that is basically the infrastructure needed to maintain the flexibility and the continuity of any economy and any country. So if we pick up utilities, mainly the power and water, that would be ideal. They need to continue. In the GCC, I'm managing the water business for Mott MacDonald, and we did not see any slowdown of almost any project related to water, whether they are mega projects or even smaller ones. So we do believe that this kind of projects will continue. The other thing that is emerging, and mainly in Saudi Arabia, the concept of multi-utilities. When I say multi-utilities, that's adding to the water and power side with the details. Solid waste, ICT, the renewable energy and storage. All of them now they are in the process of talking to each other, especially for what we call in Saudi Arabia giga cities. And I'll name a few, like the Red Sea and NEOM, among others. So now they started exploring how they, as a representative of the government, to build these utilities in a way that is digital maturity is at its highest, and at the same time they're using the latest technology. So we foresee also that kind of investment will continue. We do expect slowness in investment in other affected sectors, obviously, like retail, aviation, etc. But for us, that opens also opportunities of doing them in a different way. And this is where the innovation and the change of minds and thoughts would come into play.
Khalid asks, what would be the effect of post-corona on HSC, particularly on site works, and how can the industry cope with substantially increased costs and regulations, which will be further stress on margins?
I'll take that from a technology perspective, and I'm going to give John the opportunity to come in on this in a second. I think, obviously, there is no rosy answer to this. I can't sit here and give you positive assurances that things are going to go well. But I think the easy answer I would say is that we do have to utilize digital as much as possible. Now, whether that's through COVID-19 tracking apps, and I know that a lot of governments are investing in those and that they're available via smartphones. We're also, as an industry, from a macro perspective, projects are likely going to take longer, and we've got to manage that and manage cash flow in the right way. But just to kind of give a little bit of what is possible. One of the products that Mott MacDonald Digital Ventures has generated is a product called Rehersive, and this is a virtual reality environment which is targeting the construction sector, and that allows multiple people to collaborate either through virtual reality or through a gaming device, and it allows you to start to identify health and safety risks on site. So because this is an MMDV thing, I'm just going to give John an opportunity maybe to add a little bit more on that one.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Yeah, I agree with that. I think on the health and safety side, clearly the answer is no. Nobody knows really, but we do have our own construction region within our company, which actually has about 2,000 staff, and I've been talking to them weekly about this type of thing. So I'll just share a few of the observations we have. So I think in relation to site work on health and safety, the requirement to wear masks, of course, has a massive impact, hopefully helping people, but also lack of communication. And so there are some safety implications of wearing masks and not being able to communicate closely. If you link that with the distancing required as well on typically 2 meters, that's a really difficult thing to do for workers. So those are obvious two. I think it goes broader than that, though, into the accommodation for site workers as well when they're not working, in the welfare and sleeping overnight. There are quite a few instances, I understand, around the world of actually some breakouts in those accommodation units themselves, because it's very difficult and they're not designed for social distancing, basically, and also the travel to and from work. So, in summary, very large implications for trying to protect individuals, and the implications of how that affects working techniques, particularly through the communication. I think that's what we're seeing.
Karan asks, how does the BIM platform collaborate with the digitization of the industry?
So I think it's all part of the same journey. I think what we are seeing, and this is by no means mandatory, but when you have a project that is progressed using a process like BIM, and that generates 3D models and smart information in the objects that are contained within the models that are generated through that project process, then that's information that can then be put into the platform and used with other things like IoT and sensors that are built into the real life asset. So for me, BIM is very much delivering a project through the BIM process is very much the precursor to having this information. And it's critical that we understand what client requirements, what asset requirements are, so that we can build the right information into the models, the information models we produce when we are undertaking a project using BIM. So yeah, very much it's a vital first step towards the digitization of the industry.
Sinaj asks, by when can you give out more specifics about your work in Saudi Arabia?
I can't answer that at the moment. We're obviously under confidentiality agreement. As soon as possible is about the best answer I can give, I'm afraid.
Esmail asks, how smart infrastructure is viable in third world countries?
It's a really good question. There's two things I want to say. Obviously, part of what my remit covers is our international development services, and we are working in remote parts of the world where there isn't substantial infrastructure, where there isn't necessarily a lot of money for investment. So it can be a challenge. That said, though, there is technology that can be used to help the development of these countries, whether or not that's being done in these countries or not. And there's platforms where you can take satellite scans of the state of rice fields to make sure that the economy of a country is growing, and that can be built into a digital twin to help measure that. So there are use cases. Unfortunately, they're going to be through development organisations like the World Bank, etc., and aid agencies. So they might not necessarily be in situ. The second thing I was going to say on that is we're very privileged to be part of a UK scheme called the Prosperity Fund, which is around helping developing countries to upskill and to embrace this. And part of that Prosperity Fund is we are working with countries like Vietnam, Jordan, Brazil, just to help them develop their own BIM and digital frameworks, so that this can be applied in all nations and not reserved for just those that can afford it.
Just before that, Alexia, apologies for cutting you, but on the same question, we do see that when you're going to go for a smart city, and of course part of the smart city is the smart infrastructure, the more contained, I would say, a city is, the better chances that you can implement. So let me pick up two scenarios where you have a very large city. Let's say we are in Saudi Arabia, taking, let's say, Riyadh with more than 8 million population versus the Red Sea as a development, brand new development. Both of them, they are cities by definition. However, the success on smart infrastructure and smart cities will be far more practical, achievable when we deal with a smaller scale city and with boundaries that within the city, the decision making will be faster, the framework, established framework will be easier to implement, and of course, the number of players will be less.
Syed asks, what are the major differences between normal contract documents and digitization contracts, i.e. which sections of the contract have those changes?
That's a great question, Syed. I think it's one of those ones that we've got to look at from a holistic perspective. And I think it's vital that we start to look at client requirements and so on. Clients need to define what it is, and we need to start moving towards that. I feel that one of the things that we do is continue to advise clients on how to change their contracts to make sure that they are focused on digital information as opposed to analog information, and so on. So it's a challenge because people are very loath to change their contracts as well. I think it's very clear. When you're engaging at the start of a project with a new client or even an existing client, that you get agreement on what is being produced, where the what the key documents are, where the what is at the higher end of the precedence. There isn't there is no easy fix to this one, other than it needs to be a continual dialogue with our clients to make sure they understand the process and bringing them along on the journey with us to meet that target of a digital utopia.
Syed also asks, how do you see the future of IoT utilization by the energy / utility sector in Saudi Arabia?
Good question. Again, I think this doesn't necessarily apply to just the Saudi Arabia. I think this is across the board. But I think there are opportunities in country to do that. I think it needs to start to show benefits. It needs to start to be deployed. It does need more research. It needs client engagement to show what the benefit of that is, and it is as well. And it needs to be tied into the holistic asset management piece as well. I think it's an ongoing conversation. My personal view on what the future looks like is that the use of these devices is only ever going to increase. The caveat to that, and we've got a very good presentation on cybersecurity lined up in a couple of weeks' time, is that the more we introduce devices like this, then the more potential opportunities it's going to provide for cyber attack and loss of information or so on like that. But for me, it's a very, very positive future. It's got a there's a lot of startups, there's a lot of investment into this technology, and I think it's only going to grow.
So the next question comes from Eza, and it's directed towards Luai. From your experience, how receptive are end users of local authorities in the region to smart solutions for stormwater control, flood management? Is it on top of their list or more of a nice to have?
Okay, thank you for this question, and it is quite an important topic. As I touched on earlier, that these sporadic issues that we're having of flash flooding, it's quite a challenge now. And talking to authorities across the region, you have different levels of maturity and at the same time reactions. In many instances, we do feel it is still reactive by its nature, while other utilities, they are investing a lot of money to make sure that this risk is mitigated to the best that they can. Now, the other thing which is quite important, and Chris touched on it, is we are in the GCC, and more specific in Saudi Arabia, the penetration for the internet users is quite high. So for us, this is a huge opportunity where these users, and don't forget, users, they are not only kids at school and universities, they are workers, they're talking about people working different industries. So there is a massive opportunity for the GCC to embrace that digital change and drive it in all areas. And I read also to emphasize that many they do expect that governments, they will come and find the right solution, spend the amount of money and fix things. We need to be realistic over here, and we need to play a part, whether from our side as advisors or the digital ventures through the investment, in addition to the other parts of the private sector, to invest and be confident with the current market that we have and drive this change. We have a young population all around the GCC, and it's a great opportunity to be here and at the same time to expand to that digital transformation.
So we're going to take the last three questions now. Taheen asks, how are the opportunities under technical consultancy, brackets transaction advisory, nature services when there are challenges for site visit under COVID-19 lockdown?
So it's a great question because, obviously this is a catalyst for a change in circumstances, and we have the opportunity to look into how technology can drive this forward. So my home within Mott MacDonald is part of our global delivery services, and we provide design services to the rest of the Mott MacDonald group around the world. And we are currently working on a project where no one has been to site. We've kicked off the project and during the lockdown, but we need to collect information. So in this instance, we have used a drone to collect photographic imagery of the site, and we've used that to collate it into a point cloud that is very, very rich. You can clearly see all the different cracks in the paving stones of these concrete bridges that we're doing. So, I think it's very much of working out how we can minimize the amount of exposure that people and staff have. I don't think we can go completely without site visits, but technology such as drones and unmanned aerial vehicles, they can help because they can capture that information. It can be uploaded to cloud-based platforms that enable us to share that information, and it can almost be like you are virtually on that site without the need to travel. So I think we're going to see an increase in the adoption of technologies and techniques that enable us to do things like that.
Becky asks, how would Mott define the community of the future?
Oh, Becky does ask the hard ones. I think, the community of the future, I think, will be very, very much, as I said, driven by Go on, John. You've come off mute. I'll let you have a go.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to suggest that Louis is well placed to answer this one.
Thank you, John. I think this question needs a far longer discussion. However, I want to again repeat that a solution for a city has to come from different participation of different parts and contributors to people living in the city. That means industries, that means the manufacturers, etc. So it's a very complex question. However, we need always to balance it with, we have like now the climate change and the carbon footprint. We have a great opportunity over here. We have the renewable energy and the balance between that and the oil prices. We have the connectivity and all the digital topics and great ideas that we share today. All of them, they need to be in the same pot to come out with an ideal, I would say, scenario. And this will carry some adjustments throughout the journey. But the key question to me is when we are going to start in the construction industry, and we need to move fast.
And then the final question that we can take today: how do you see the construction industry outlook post COVID-19?
It's a very good question. Again, I think the first thing I would say is that if anybody is saying they know the answer, then they're probably not telling the truth. We've got to get through this period first, I think, is the key thing. We've got to see what its effect. We're planning for elongation in projects, and we've got to make sure that we continue to adapt to the new working styles. I mean, if you think about it holistically and from a macro perspective, then nothing is going to drastically change in terms of what the construction industry is trying to do. We are continuing trying to build a environment that allows us to maintain a sustainable quality of life. Now that's not going to change. We've still got to cater for the many billions of people that live on this planet, and we've got to make sure that they're able to live their lives in the right way. So I think construction as an industry is not going anywhere. But that said, I think there is going to be a different approach to whether we need as much office space, whether we need bigger offices. Those sort of things are being discussed. So I think we're very much in the early days of answering that question. I think the question we had earlier around the site and health and safety was a good example of, we don't quite know what's going to happen, but we know something will, and we've got to try and plan as best for it.
Well, thank you all for attending this webinar. This is, as I mentioned, the first session of 3. The next session will be on the 13th of May, and we are going to address cybersecurity and new ways of working. So I think some of the questions raised today will be addressed during our next session. Thank you very much. Be safe and have a good day.
Thank you very much, everyone.